If you're a Pittsburgh baseball fan, then this is the podcast for you. Make your way down, grab a beverage, and get ready to talk Pirates with myself, Craig Toth, and Scott Jackson, two of the biggest fans you'll ever meet. This is Bucks in the Basement.
Now I see the changes in this town. They change, they say one thing, but then the next day it's different. They change, but they don't know what they want. All they do is change. Going left, going right, travel day, travel night. That's where we'll go. No excuses, no goodbyes, no one cries, no one lies. We'll never know.
At this point in the offseason, Pirates fans are looking for really anything to get happy about. And they were given a little bit of a nugget in the form of a gold glove for Mr. Jared Triolo. And it isn't that this guy didn't deserve it. I mean, as Pirates fans, we all know what his glove looks like because he won a minor league gold glove. We've talked about when he's had to fill in for Brian Hayes even last season for games, how well he has played, and maybe didn't look as good as Key did when it's a full, healthy Key, but we knew he was going to be good. But Scott, I mean, I think you were along the same lines of deserved it, but surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. And where we live in the country in the fall, some trees do turn gold, and the Pirates' big tree got some gold for himself. It's not that we didn't think he deserved it because we've seen him play very well defensively. I didn't expect other people around Major League Baseball, the managers and the coaches, to notice him because of the offensive year that he at least started with. And it's nice to see that the guys around baseball were able to recognize the talent that he has.
And I think that's one thing that, like, Pirates fans, I mean, we were thinking about like a Brian Hayes before because Brian Hayes could have won, a gold glove before last season. He was more than deserving, previous to that.
He got robbed.
And he got robbed, but we would think, he has to hit as well, even though it's not part of the award, because that gives it a little bit of show. I think with Arenado, at least to a degree in front of Hayes, getting that gold glove was just the notoriety. And just if you voted for somebody so many years in a row and they have another good season, it's like somebody's going to have like an off the wall season to kind of overtake them. And that's what Cabrian did. I mean, obviously Jared Triolo's is part of a newer award. Only been around for the past couple of years. I think Ha-Sung Kim won the first utility player, then Brendan Donovan, who was going against Triolo, won the second one. Thought he might just get it again, even though Triolo did have a better defensive season than him, just because, like I said, once a guy's up for an award again, you've got, Teoscar Hernandez, more well-known, at least to, I would say, the Major League fan base, and especially Pirates fans, because when they play for the Dodgers, it's a name you hear of more often. But I mean, kudos to Jared. I mean, number one, I believe we mentioned this previously. I mean, he only had, I believe it was like 3 errors for the entire season. And I think he had like 2 of those errors during the first week with the jitters, as we had mentioned. And then just consistently played, good baseball. And I know it doesn't make like the spectacular plays in some ways. He's not one of those guys that's like leaning and diving over the line and making those jump stops and everything and throwing. But there are some like barehanded plays you see him make where even the pitchers, I can remember one from this season at some point in time where a pitcher went to reach out to get it. Triolo was charging in, barehanded it, threw the guy out, and the pitcher was upset that he missed it and then was just in awe of, Triolo making that play. But like you mentioned, the bat did come around. did look at it, and I think we've even mentioned this previously, or it's been mentioned somewhere else, is that, once he had to take over full time for Brian Hayes, I did look at it. He had an even 100 WRC plus. And for a player that, is kind of glove first, I mean, even though Triolo's a little bit bigger of a guy, did show a little bit more power towards the end of the season. If you get that type of player, I mean, that's a player that's kind of like in, I would say, like the old school baseball wheelhouse. Is like a guy that hits fairly well. I think of like maybe like an Omar Vizquel or somebody like that who, has an OPS sitting around like 7 something. Uh, Hits for average, I think Omar did a little bit more than Triolo would, but that's not part of the game. Now, Triolo always kind of seems to give you a professional at bat, which is a little bit surprising for a guy who, this was his first full season in the majors. Um, I do like him, and I'll say it again. And I mean, this is the offseason and be repeating stuff, but I'll just say it again. Like, I would love him as a utility player, but he's that type of guy that is good to have if a player does go down, because you do know that he can fill in at multiple positions, will provide you with good defense, and hopefully the bat comes to that like little median where it's not like as horrible as it was at the beginning of the season. It's obviously not going to be as off the charts as it was at the end of last season, because that was, batting average on balls in play aided decently. But I looked at this one. I mean, his BABIP is as high as it was, or BABIP at one point in time, the highest it was around like 329 during those good months. And I think the 329 part was when he was actually not hitting as well. When he had the lower, it was like 225, was when he kind of surged. So, I mean, you kind of find that middle ground with him. But more than anything, I mean, it is good to see a Pirate get some recognition, on the major league scene.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that he can sometimes fall into that trap, and this is part of what I was concerned about, is like Hayes, where you're not making the flashy plays because of the skill level. You're making difficult plays look routine, and then your other plays that other guys wouldn't even try, you're at least making an attempt and getting a shot at, maybe getting a few more errors than we see that with Hayes than maybe some players would. But yeah, the defense for this infield is really starting to shape up. I mean, you're going into next year, you feel like either they trade Triolo like they did with Stallings after he won his Gold Glove. Maybe you sell high on Triolo, or you have an infield that includes Key Brian Hayes, IKF, who's a former utility Gold Glove winner as well, and Triolo. That's pretty solid defense. You got to mix Nick Gonzalez in there. What are you going to do at first base? Is it going to be Reynolds? Is it going to be a free agent, or is it going to be Triolo? If in worst case scenario, possibly. Yeah. So it's nice to see him get the recognition. I think it brings up more questions, more topics of conversation for us in this off season where we're looking for things to talk about. But yeah, I think that he could be an important bench piece that you try to fit in where you can. And honestly, is IKF going to finish the year with the team? This is going to be his last year of like the control that they have for him. You start out with him and things don't go the way that you want. You move IKF and then Triolo becomes your guy in that same position. Yeah, we'll just have to see how things shake out.
And the thing you bring up with Stallings is kind of where I mentioned to you that I might have to go not like totally negative on this, but I mean, us as Pirates fans, I mean, you see Stallings win a Gold Glove, and you feel good for the player because, I feel that as Pirates fans, like we do kind of like, I don't know if it's like grasp onto some players or just we just gravitate towards some players. And, Stallings was a good guy, won the Gold Glove. We're happy for him. We felt like Cabrian had been snubbed previously. He wins. We're happy for him. Triolo wins. We are surprised. It's the same thing as, as a Pirates fan. Like, I'm going to be dating myself here, but, when Jason Bay was named Rookie of the Year. I mean, that was something pretty exciting. Freddie Sanchez going for a batting title. I mean, even now with, Paul Skeens probably, winning Rookie of the Year, I would think at this point in time. But then also, if I go to like the begrudged Pirates fan side of my head, is that, these things are all fine and good, but I mean, winning these awards don't provide wins for the baseball teams. Like you said, Stallings, after he wins it, he's traded. Obviously, it's a decision, that Charrington makes, but didn't really do anything. Brian Hayes finally breaks through and wins the Gold Glove, has an injury-riddled season, and then nothing happens. Jason Bay is Rookie of the Year and provides, the Pirates fans with at least a little bit of offense, a little bit of fun during those very dark times, at PNC Park, but eventually, is kind of traded off. So, none of these awards and stuff that give us like a little bit of happy and fun feelings and good feelings for the players have really turned into anything. So, I mean, yes, I get excited for the players in these instances, and when they truly do deserve it, I will speak out for it. I've spoken out, for Hayes previous to that, but that's like maybe the negative side of the Pirates fan brain for me
Right.
is just that, what does this really turn into? And, Triolo is still the, zero point 0.4 F4 player that we had out there last season. And is that good enough?
It gives the front office and the marketing department another thing to try to sell tickets on. It doesn't actually result in more wins. Yeah, just like you said, yeah, Triolo. It doesn't make Triolo a superstar overnight. It doesn't make him a household name, but it does validate what we have seen, that he is a solid, above solid, an exceptional defender, and just need the bat to come around.
Yeah, and I mentioned everybody else, and I completely forgot that Brian Reynolds is now up for a Silver Slugger, and once again, like well deserved, as we were talking about beforehand, just as the consistent player within the Pirates lineup, the one that you can kind of count on. Um, not for the first, month and a half of the season or month or whatever it may be, but in the end, his numbers come around to be, a very solid major league hitter. He's a professional player, and it's somebody that you would want to have on your team. I believe everybody was questioning the utility piece of this, but Scott, you uh, kind of like looked into this a little bit more for us and had some information as to, how they can kind of work this utility into it because we think of utility, we think of a guy, I think we think of super utility. Um,
Yeah.
but Reynolds might fit into that utility category a little bit.
Yeah, when I think utility, I think of your Jay Hayes, your Ben Zobrist, guys like that that play all around. But when I saw that, I went and Google searched it, and I found a press release from Major League Baseball when they were announcing the utility Silver Slugger. 'Cause this is only the third time they've given it out, and it said that it was for players that have played multiple or more than one defensive position, which is weird because you just figure outfield is outfield. But he did DH quite a bit, and there is a DH Silver Slugger. So I guess the idea would be, but the way Derek Shelton puts together his lineups, when we look at that, I don't think that we see too many players that exclusively play one position. If Rowdy Telez would have had a, a better year offensively, the times that he pitched, does that disqualify him for a first base Silver Slugger? Because he did pitch quite a bit, So, um, yeah, it's nice to see the recognition again. He doesn't have a shot at winning, I don't think, because Mookie Betts and Luis Rise are, among the players that he's up against. But the recognition, the acknowledgement that he is that, as we keep talking I think every week we bring it up. He's the consistent. He's the rock. He's the dependable number two guy in your lineup that you know what you're going to get out of him, no matter how he starts. there comes to be a point in the season where you're like, oh wow, Brian Reynolds just isn't doing well, and then you don't look at his numbers because he's going to be in the lineup every day. He's going to give you good at bats, and then middle part of the season you look at it, and, oh wow, okay, his batting average is up to that. He has that many home runs. You just expect a certain level out of him, and he sneaks up and will correct those numbers. And by the end of the season, you just know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked about this, many times on the show, is that, he got to that point where he was, you know, teetering on possible MVP candidate when he was like up around like 6 WAR and stuff. And I think that, us as Pirates fans believe that maybe he would follow that trajectory up a little bit more before, kind of coming back down. But I mean, we talk about players, and not that, Brian Reynolds was a, late bloomer by, any stretch of the imagination, but he was also a college bat as opposed to a high school bat, and a player that, got up here when he was 20, 24, 25, as opposed to being, 22, 23. So when you have, you get to those couple extra years, past that, then, the fall off may happen a little bit quicker. But I mean, when you have a guy who is in your lineup and you can get 3 to 4 WAR out of him and can count on that pretty much season in and season out, I believe at this point in time, then yeah, I mean, I'm glad that he's getting that recognition. And like you said, it doesn't seem that doesn't have much of a chance there. But and with the utility thing, I think that it's like you said, I think it's their way to try to find to give players and players that may not fit into certain categories or may not be in the top of the outfield or whatever, that you may be able to squeeze them into that super utility, which is good for Major League Baseball to not kind of like maybe like think outside the box a little bit,
Yeah.
to get some players that may not get that recognition at times, to kind of get them thrown in there. And like I
Yeah.
said, we're seeing it with Reynolds and then also with Triolo.
It's only fair because it really has become its own position. Every team seems to have that guy that bounces around, and it's just not. And the way contracts are structured with certain incentives, I'm sure the Players Association had a lot to say about providing that opportunity for guys that do bounce around, and giving them an opportunity to make that extra money in their incentivized contract.
Speaking of bouncing around, because I'm great at segues in here and stuff, we were talking about Rowanzi Contreras, former Pirate, now former Angel, picked up by the Texas Rangers. Um, a little bit of a surprise, I guess, to maybe some fans, because, there were some good games that he had out there for the Angels. I mean, did not perform terribly overall, was not, lights out at times. But of course, I mean, it was brought up by many, many people I know within the Pirate sports media and other podcasters and stuff that, after he had like about 4 good games in a row, that, we were silly for giving him up. And then, the next thing you know, the Angels give up on him. And it's not saying that Rowanzi will never find his way,
Mhm.
but I don't know if it's not like saying that it justifies, or you can put that feather in the cap of Charrington and stuff. But I think that it shows that like how tough Major League Baseball and like is, and how often, you know, this type of thing happens, where then a player will bounce around, from team to team to team, and maybe find success at some point in time. But if not, they're just like this, they'll be a good guy, or they'll be, a bench piece or something for a team. And it's like, man, I got to get him on my grid at some point in time, because I can get him in for filling in for playing for, multiple teams across Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I do think it is a bit of a validation for the Pirates, and the Charrington specifically's identification of exactly what he was, because I personally was a big fan, and I pulled so hard for him, and I wanted him to figure it out, and I was excited. Rwansi Day coming up through Altoona and Indy, um, but I think it is a bit of a validation because so many people in the media and the podcasting sphere of Pirates social media were saying, "Oh, you can't give up on him. He's going to figure it out," and then he does go to Los Angeles and have a little bit of success. But then it just shows that Charrington didn't miss something necessarily. He wasn't the only person that completely blew it. That he went to the Angels, and the Angels kind of thought it was the same thing that the Pirates thought he was. And hopefully for him, he finds the right coach that unlocks just the right thing because I do want him to succeed. And maybe that's in Texas, or maybe he's just one of those guys that bounces around to five, six, seven different teams as the rosters develop throughout the offseason. Maybe he circles back around to Pittsburgh. Uh, you just don't know at this point because we do have some roster spots open, and the bullpen is an area where the Pirates really need to focus. So it's possible that you go back to some familiar names. It's possible that you just decide to go fresh for everything. I wish him the best, and we'll see if he sticks with Texas. But I don't think that that's going to happen. I think he's going to bounce around.
And that's where, like, I mean, I think, just as Pirates fans, like, we got so excited about him, and we don't realize how often this happens in Major League Baseball where, a player comes out and has, like, a very good or a lights out, rookie year. I mean, I think I've mentioned this about a million times where it's like, go back and look through, the rookies of the year for each league over the past, like, 20 some years, and you'll find more than a handful of names that even the most adamant or diehard MLB fan will be like, who?
I
And
think of
you
Warren
don't.
Morris. Remember Warren Morris? He had a great rookie year. Didn't win Rookie of the Year at all, but his rookie year was solid, and we all had high hopes for him. And then where was he the next year? Just completely nothing.
Yeah, and with Rawanzi, I mean, just the how quickly that downfall kind of came was definitely very crazy. But I can remember, like, looking back to last year, I went to a game in St. Louis, and Rawanzi pitched the second game that I went to, and I looked at my brother-in-law, and I just basically said he doesn't have it today, and he goes, "Well, he threw one bad pitch," and I'm just like, if he can't locate, that one pitch, I mean, it could be a very long day, and that's kind of what it was. And then it just snowballed that he could not locate that pitch, consistently for the rest of the year. And I, like you said, don't know really what happened. Everybody, within the Pirates organization was saying it was mechanical. Maybe it was the same thing, with the Angels. And if you keep him in a bullpen role in certain situations, low leverage, at times that you can kind of at least get him to work, out of those situations or work well in those situations. But overall, it becomes that he's a middle relief piece that, like you said, can be passed around. But I mean, we'll see what happens with him. And speaking of getting passed around and guys that could get passed around, we got to bring up Tristan Gray and Trey Cabbage, two players that Pirates fans are very excited they are here. And that if you look within their even minor league careers have played for multiple organizations. They may be those prototypical minor league players, but they're also those types of players. And I think of, God, who was it a couple years ago from the Tigers? Was it Greg Allen? I believe his name was. Was it from the Tigers or from the Yankees? I can't remember. We picked him up early on in the season. I believe he ended up playing a couple games for us. It might be in where you have to name all of the Pirates players who played during a season. But that's the types of players that I think of, is that you pick up these guys because they're available at that point in time. And you're thinking not only of roster building for your major league team, but you're also thinking of organizational building for your minor league teams. Because, I mean, I said to you before the show, the Tristan Gray one, didn't make as much sense to me because he's a guy who is, we'll use the word utility. He's a utility infielder. He plays, all over the infield, except I don't think he's played much first base. Probably has played a little bit in the minor leagues because in the minor leagues, if you play infield, you'll end up playing first base at some point in time. Is more of like that second base, shortstop, maybe third base, a little bit type of guy. And we would think, okay, well, we have Alika Williams. We have obviously on the major league roster, we have Nick Gonzalez, we have Jared Triolo, we have IKF, we have all these guys, and even then we have Liover Peguero. I mean, there's just this plethora. Tamar Johnson pushing his way up. So why would you go out and get one of those guys? But as I talked through it with you, Scott, it was more of, well, they signed Seth Beer and Jake Lamb, and they had two of those guys. And Seth Beer, who was actually a major leaguer at one point in time, which these guys have only each gotten their cups of coffee. And I mean, Seth Beer was like a legit major leaguer. The dude started in Double-A this year. So you could, pick up these guys at this point in time to basically say, hey, we'll pick them up now because we like their profile. We like them. Who knows? We may have spoken with them at some point in time and like their attitude and like, what they could bring to the organization, whatever it may be. Or they just may say, you know what? This is a guy that could be a plug and play down in Altoona or Indianapolis on the bench for the rest of the season, and he may never see the major leagues at all during the season.
Yeah, I remember when Cabbage left the Angels. Yeah, that's who it was. And there were Pirate fans that were talking about bringing him in then, before he went to Houston. I looked up his minor league numbers. In 23, in 107 games at AAA Salt Lake. I don't know how that field necessarily plays, but I imagine that the balls fly there. He hit 306. Yeah, elevation. The 306, 379, 596 slash line, 30 home runs, 32 steals. So he had a 30-30 season in AAA. Now he goes to Houston. He's in Sugarland, and he hits 243. And 13 home runs, 22 steals. So he's got speed. He's got power. He's a bit older. He's 28, 29 years old in that neighborhood. So he's not exactly a young prospect. But like we were saying before the show, if the Pirates are going to have one of those years where they catch lightning in a bottle and they make a deep push, these are the kind of moves that they need to hit on. He needs to be, the Pedro Alvarez that has 30 plus home runs for the team and just comes out of nowhere, because we're not going to sign a Pete Alonso that's going to play first base and it's going to provide those kind of numbers. These are the moves that result in big wins for the team. And not to say that I think he's going to be the guy, but I think he has a better chance of sticking around than Tristan Gray does.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that he does, and I was talking to you beforehand that John Parado had interviewed Cherington down at the GM meetings. I mean, everybody's jumping on Cherington for saying that he is one of those guys that's in the mix. He actually has played a little bit more of first base. He's more of that like first base outfield type of guy, corner outfield type of guy. Cherington isn't going to, crap on this guy when he comes in. They obviously saw something in him that they would want to bring him in. But it's also a guy that, has proven that he can hit at least at the AAA level, has a little bit of major league experience. And if you have him sitting down, at first base in AAA and there would be an injury or, there would be an injury in spring training, or he would just come out and light the world on fire in spring training and there's no way you can hold him off of the roster, I mean, then that's kind of something that, you would do. I mean,
if you're on the
is
40-man roster, by definition, you're in the mix.
Yeah.
So, and there are rules that are, in place the way that the GMs can talk about players. And so, yeah, you're right. It doesn't make any sense to pick up a guy on waivers and then crap on him. Yeah, he might end up being at double or triple A and competing with Malcolm Nunez for, first base or whatever. But yeah, by definition, if you're on the 40-man roster, you're in the mix and you're going to go to spring training and you're going to get a look.
Yeah, and everybody's gonna like probably get on me for this. It was somebody I brought up, before we hopped on here, and I just basically said, can we get a Max Muncy? And I had looked at Muncy's stats, at times, and obviously they weren't like off the charts or anything, but he was like a 27-year-old guy, had been kind of tossed around from one organization to the next. I believe he was with the Oakland A's at one point in time within their organization. Ends up, in his 26, 27-year-old season, kind of breaks out in Oklahoma City, for the Dodgers. And starting at the age of really, 27, 28, now he's about 34, has put together almost 25 WAR for his career for a guy that a lot of other teams would have probably given up on by that point in time. I mean, I know that Pirates fans would, because they'd be like, oh, he's 26, 27. Like, why are we picking up this guy? And it's not to say Trey Cabbage is going to be that kind of guy, but at some point in time in this, like you talk about the waiver wire acquisitions that the Pirates have made, different stuff like that. I mean, have found, bullpen help at times. It would be nice to kind of hit on, one of these outfielders, middle infielders, first baseman, whatever it may be.
Maybe Cabbage can be the Joey Bart of this season.
That would be awesome, man. If he could come in and light that on fire. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, obviously, early on in the season, the Pirates fans will be frustrated because these are, waiver wire moves. But if you look across Major League Baseball, I think somebody put out there when, I don't know if it was Cabbage or Gray got picked up, and somebody wrote like the jokes write themselves. And then either the Dodgers or the Cardinals picked up Roddery Munoz, who the Pirates had picked up on waivers this last season. And I almost wanted to put, yeah, the jokes do write themselves, because you might be the joke, because every team makes these and they may mean something. More than likely, they mean nothing. But for Pirates fans and for the Pirates, I mean, these are kind of the types of moves that could sneakily accelerate them, past some of the other ball clubs.
Yeah, I think that at this point in the season, it's surprising that the Pirates are at 38 players on their 40-man roster, because really what you should be doing is picking up these waiver claims and holding on to them until something better comes along, and then you discard them. It's not, unless they have something close with a free agent, it just makes sense to pick up some guys and just hold on to them until something better comes along. And with Tristan Gray having been a Pirates draft pick, right? So he's
Yeah.
familiar with the organization. Yeah, I think that at this point it's probably forgivable that they're a little short, but you go a couple more weeks and there would be no excuse to not have your roster full. We haven't gotten to the Rule 5 roster crunch yet. We'll get to that point where tough decisions have to be made, but it's better to make those tough decisions and have an excess of talent than to be in a position where you're searching and trying by the end of it picking up whoever just to have them.
Yeah. I mean, you got the Rule 5 coming up. I don't know if the Pirates, really have anybody else to add, but, there's different stuff that could be come about from that. There could be people that would be, cut loose from teams, or at least be available from teams that you may not have thought would be available. Also, you have, arbitration coming up where players may be non-tendered. So there's maybe a couple openings there. And for me, I mean, the thing that I talk about with people, outside of this podcast, when people ask me like, we have a couple spots left. Well, why hasn't Kutch been signed yet? And I feel like that, Charrington is kind of protective of those things. I mean, obviously, if Kutch wants to come back, he'll come back. He'll probably test his legs a little bit, see how the offseason treats him.
He said he
But I
wants to
mean,
come
that's
back. Yeah.
yeah. But that's the
Yeah.
thing is like if this is the way that free agency moved, as soon as, we were able to, which we were actually able to prior to that, because you can negotiate for 5 days, after free agents, after they become free agents, you have that like, non-compete and negotiate. They could have signed him back again. But I mean, I think that Charrington is under the understanding that, okay, at some point in time, I'm going to have to add Kutch to this 40 man. But for right now, can I have, some of these moves? And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised, like you're saying, maybe to see, a couple more of those guys added in the next few days here, unless they're going to make a signing, coming out of the GM meetings, which wouldn't be totally surprising if they would become aggressive. But even within Major League Baseball, especially like last year, it was super slow to start out and did not heat up, until, around the winter meetings and beyond that. And then you saw guys that we thought were going to get signed for big long-term contracts were frustrated and waiting around and then signing opt-out deals.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother thing. Opt-out deals. But yeah, there were guys that you would have thought would have gone early in the offseason last year that were signing in spring training. So I think that's that's what makes baseball different than the other sports, because when free agency hits for the NBA or for the NFL, that first day, that first minute is packed. And with baseball, it's we got 4 or 5 months. No big deal. Kutch will be there. We can wait till after Christmas for Kutch, which really I don't know. That he was asked about it on social media within the last week or so, and are you coming back? And if you'll have me, he wants to be in Pittsburgh, so why not just get that out of the way instead of just taking it for granted, and then you have your spot locked up. But is that a Charrington thing of I don't want to make a decision until I absolutely have to, and we'll see how that's taking up a roster spot that could be taken by somebody else. Let's wait till he's not going anywhere. You just don't want to take Kutch for granted.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that way. Yeah, get Kutch locked up, let him enjoy Thanksgiving, Christmas with the family, and not have to worry about anything.
Yeah, unless they have an understanding that everybody's on the same page, which I guess that could happen. But yeah, as an outsider looking in, it just makes sense. He's going to be on the team. I think this will probably be his last year personally, if I had to place a bet on it. But yeah, you want him back, and he's got a little bit of juice left. Yeah, just get it taken care of.
Either that or just go sign Soto.
Yeah, right. I heard that the teams that are in on him includes the Rays. So if the Rays could do it, then why can't Pittsburgh?
Dude, the Rays are the Rays make me so mad because weren't they in on they're like, oh yeah, just give Aaron Judge a call. Yeah, we're actually not going to sign him, but let's just give him a call.
We're just curious of what you're asking. Yeah, we just want to know. Maybe they were in on arson